Happy Monday, new month, new intro video, and it is a landmark month this November 2025 for me, personally, for my business, and for the podcast. We will be hitting 200 episodes at the end of this month. I'll also be passing my 6th anniversary in business, and so felt like I needed to do something a bit more to celebrate. So in that final week, we're going to have a few bonus episodes, a couple of, one or two very special guests, which I will keep to myself for now. And of course, the usual every Wednesday episode for the rest of this month. So coming up this week, we have a returning favourite guest, Mr. David Bates. We've not had him on the show for 90 odd episodes now. He'll be here to talk about his new book and all the work and what he's been doing since we last saw him. Really good episode this week. Don't miss that one. Next week, I actually have so many of them, I have to refer to my notes now. Next week, we have corporate spy, speaker, consultant, Jeremy Hurewitz. And on the 19th, my guest will be Dr. Tomas Chamorro-Premuzic, who has a somewhat controversial view on authenticity, so we'll be exploring that one. The week after that, we have a mentalist on the show. It's not Patrick Jane, if you don't get that reference. That's on you, really. But it is Gary Chan. We'll be exploring the mind and lessons of leadership and more besides. And then in the big week, I have 1 or 2 surprise episodes that I'm going to keep to myself for now. And we'll be closing out the month with another PhD, Dr. Cynthia Bentzen-Mercer. We'll be talking with her about the 7-minute pivot, among other things. So pretty good lineup. A couple of surprises to come. I hope you'll enjoy them. I hope you'll be with us for all of these. How many is it? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. At least 6, maybe 7. We'll see how we get on. Episodes for the rest of this month. A couple of PhDs, a corporate spy, a mentalist, a favourite guest. Can't say much fairer than that. That's all from me. Here's a quick preview from a few of those episodes for you. It's not the surprise ones. I'm not going to give it away that easily. But yeah, get an idea of what you're in for.
I think that part of the challenge is we've been communicating for our whole lives. And so we think we've mastered communication by the time we've graduated from college, if that's the direction we've gone, or finished our apprenticeship, or whatever it is that we've gone out, we've launched out into the world. And because we've communicated for our whole lives, we've figured out how to get what we want or what we need. And so we think we've mastered it. And that's, as I talk about in other cases in the book, it's a false mastery. And so what we realize is that all of the things that we need to get done depend on some kind of a connection with another person. And if they depend on connection with that other person, then we have to be able to interact with that person in a productive way. And the degree to which we are more productive or less productive drives the end result that we get. So I use this example. I give a talk on how to be heard, which is kind of intentionally the opposite of the hearing and listening framework, because people want to be heard. If we're not being heard, if people are not listening to what we're saying, we can't accomplish the goal that we're there for. And people call engineering or veterinary science or pharmaceuticals or whatever it is, they call that a hard skill. And then they call communications soft skills. And I use this illustration in the talk where I show a picture of a Porsche 918. And I asked, does anybody want to go for a ride with me? And people who are car people will know that that's a pretty high-end, fun, almost a little bit dangerous car to drive. And then the next slide, after they say, yeah, that would be fun, I take the wheels off of it in the picture. And I ask, how would we do that without the soft stuff? The truth is that there is no hard and soft. They're all skills.
There's a quote that's attributed to Abraham Lincoln, who supposedly said, I don't like that person, I must get to know him better. And that's a really great touchstone for how spies think about things. So one of my favorite quotes from a former case officer in the book is, every good intelligence officer has a real bond with their target on some level and in some regard. So these are real relationships. And the reason I highlight that is because, stepping back, spies don't get to recruit people they would probably otherwise choose to spend time with. They very frequently have to recruit criminals, terrorists, diplomats from some of the most repressive and odious regimes around the world. And in order to overcome their, obvious issues with people's moralities or values, or whatever it might be, they have to practice what I call radical empathy, or sometimes referred to as tactical empathy. And the idea here is that I estimated casually that 99% of humanity has some redeeming quality to them if you work hard enough to try to find. There's very few people that are just all 100% through and through kind of evil and have nothing that you can't dig up that you can try to connect to. So you have to be patient, and you have to leverage many of the skills I write about. It starts with active listening. It starts with really letting that person talk. It includes leveraging intellectual curiosity, which the CIA screens for and then trains their case officers in, because it all has to be a process in getting to know the person, putting aside your compunctions about them and trying to find an area of connectivity. It's the criminal that's a devoted family man. It's the terrorist that practices acts of charitable good. It's about, the Iranian diplomat who actually loves recreational basketball, and so do you. So, it's about finding that area of connectivity, and there's usually something there, so you have to work at it.
The last book, which is a critique of the mainstream authenticity kind of a zeitgeist or cult, if you like, is an attempt to make people understand that work is not an invitation to just unleash your unedited or unfiltered self on others. You're not paid in your job or work to kind of be yourself, whatever that means, but that at some point, the right to be you ends and your obligation to others begins. So what I try to do in this book is to inject some common sense into the popular kind of narrative or rhetoric around authenticity. I think the line is where other people tell you it is or want it to be, Hopefully it's not the same with your romantic partner as with your boss, right? I mean, it might be that your romantic partner is your boss, but even then, I would argue, there is a line for the office or work, and there's a line, for the bedroom or home. Humans are complex creatures. I think our character, our personality, and our identity is pretty complex. It required a century of research to really understand even how you measure these things and how you make sense of people. And with that comes the fact that we, as individuals, are unique, yes, just like everybody else, but we also inhabit multiple selves, which means that we play different roles in life. So, there is the you who is the professional, the you who's the consultant, the you who's the boss, the you who's the employee, the you who's the entrepreneur, the you who's the son, the husband, etc., and so on. So work is not an invitation to display all of these dimensions of yourself at once, but rather an invitation to display those that are relevant. And granted, even in your work, some people will want to access certain elements of you that are more private than others. I use a very simple example, but I think most people could relate to it. It's like most people have opinions about what's going on in the world today, whether it's, Israel and Gaza, Ukraine and Russia, climate change, Trump, Keir Starmer, etc. Not all of your colleagues are interested in your broadcasting your unsolicited views in a work setting. If you're a leader, the temptation to do so is huge because you think you're a reference for others. But that's a recipe to alienate people and to divide people.
This is also a straightforward one for me. I think it's not seeing it from the other person's perspective. And I think this is true of all leaders of all levels oftentimes, is they don't see it from the other person's perspective, whether it's because they don't have the time, they don't care, or they don't know how. And I actually think it's mostly the last one. Because if you knew how, then, why wouldn't you? So one of the things that I will often ask like a junior analyst who like they haven't really been working that long to help me put together slides for like the board or senior management. So like basically the most senior people, which are several levels above where they're at. And the question is, why do you do that? So besides sort of employee engagement and motivating folks and helping them learn, besides career advancement, for me on my side, I do this because I think that it forces you, as in the analyst, to be creative and think about what those people will want, because they haven't been working for that long. They don't really understand what all of those different stakeholders really care about. And what I try to get them to understand is there's actually way more information out there than you might realize. The first thing they always ask me is, hey, can I get a sit down with the CEO? Can I get a sit down with the board chair and the CFO? And I always go through the process. I say, why is that? And they're like, well, because I need to understand how they think. And then I say, do you think that they'll want to sit down with you? It's like, no, they won't. That's why I need you to set up a meeting. To which I say, hey, is there some other way that you can learn? And they're like, no. And I'm like, have you been to the library? So, so there's just so much information out there, and you know who all the people are. And even if you don't know who all the people are, you know what their roles are. So what do you think a CFO cares about? It's not a trick question. Money. They care about money. So, I mean, each of these roles have something they care about.
The 7-minute pivot is really this notion of helping with that neuroplasticity to help us to frame our day, our issues, our problems, our barriers in a slightly more positive direction. And so here's the practice. You set an alarm. Now, you can do this any time of the day. I personally find morning is great, so it sets the tone for the day. But you do this when you can find your 7 minutes. So distraction-free, turn off your bells and whistles, 7-minute timer. And what we know about the 7-minute timer is for the person that tends to drone on about things, it sort of gives you a hard stop, right? Okay, we're gonna be done with this in 7 minutes. And for the person that's more like me, that doesn't like to sit in the mess of life, I just am like more of an optimistic, person. It requires me to sit for 7 minutes and go introspective and deal with this, whatever it is. It's not meditation in that you're not sort of just calling on the universe. It's not your spiritual time where you're sort of praying or seeking. Those are both helpful and relevant depending on the person. This is additive. I set the 7-minute timer and I journal, and I'm asking myself one question. So a great prompt is, what is standing in my way right now of my aspirational next, the thing that I aspire to? Your aspirational next could be a promotion, a job change, finishing a degree, a certification, right? Could be many things. What is standing in the way of my aspirational next? And you begin to journal during that 7-minute pivot. And then what I ask people to do is ask yourself why at least 3 times. Why is that? Why is that? Why is that? Because we get down below the surface of the what's standing in my time, right? We could be done in 30 seconds. Time is the thing that's standing in my way. Why? Well, because I've got this, this, and this. Why? Right? So you start to really unpack and get underneath it. And then the magic happens here. At the end of the 7 minutes, you choose one small thing, one small incremental thing that you can do today to move yourself in a slightly incremental move forward.